Since their introduction to the U.S. market in 2007, the popularity of e-cigarettes has grown exponentially among those trying to quit smoking. Public opinion concerning the safety of this technology is divided by conflicting information.
It's called vaping because the liquid nicotine, which is found in here, vaporizes when you press this button. Now, even though there is no tar and no smoke, there is still nicotine, which is the addictive part. Yet, e-cigarette advocates say this is healthier than one of these.
This little guy is a small little battery. This part up here is the tank. And the top unscrews, and you take the liquid and pour it inside.
To be able to satisfy that nicotine addiction without having the consequences of combustion is, to many, many people that are feeling trapped by combustible tobacco, it gave them hope. It gave them a way out.
A new survey from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says more young people are using electronic cigarettes.
There is a new trend among teens using e-cigarettes, also known as vapes. Here to talk about health.
This is making teenagers pick up these little devices.
Smoking bans are spreading on the Sun Coast. We're seeing small businesses opening up that sell those products. But are they ever any better for you than just...
Health news for you tonight. More teenagers are experimenting with electronic cigarettes.
It's not some widespread problem. It's just creative use of statistics.
But now the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says that the percentage of teenagers using e-cigarettes has more than doubled.
They take statistics about children experimenting with e-cigarettes and they blow it up to try and make people think that you have millions of kids using an e-cigarette on a daily basis. And then you even have those people that are incredibly dishonest, saying that we have evidence that e-cigarettes might be a gateway to real smoking.
Middle schoolers are starting off with e-cigarettes and then progressing to conventional cigarettes.
Are we about to see a whole revival of smoking based on these e-cigs?
Over the past 3 years, as e-cigarettes have boomed and more teens have begun taking puffs off of e-cigarettes at the very least, the smoking rate among teens and the rate at which teens are trying their first cigarette has declined every single year.
Which is something that has never, in the history of this country, prior to electronic cigarettes arriving, that's never happened.
This is a gimmick to keep people addicted. It is impossible for anybody who struggles with smoking to say, look, I'm going to switch to electronic cigarettes and I'm going to quit smoking altogether.
The reason why e-cigarettes are not smoking cessation products and never should be marketed as such is because there's no such thing really as smoking cessation under federal law. What products like the nicotine gum, patch, lozenge, etc. are approved for is tobacco use and dependence. So that means that the intention of the gum, patch, lozenge, etc. is to get you off of nicotine in 8 to 12 weeks. E-cigarettes aren't intended for that. No clinical trial done on e-cigarettes has had that as the goal. The goal is get somebody to switch to a product that's 99% less hazardous than smoking.
As far as the government's concerned, they're not quitting smoking because of electronic cigarettes. The government doesn't recognize it as a smoking cessation device. As a person who sees people who were smoking and not smoking anymore, it looks that way to me.
To put it succinctly, the evidence for e-cigarettes helping you get off tobacco is not strong.
Among smokers trying to stop without any professional support, those who use e-cigarettes are more likely to report abstinence than those who use a licensed NRT product bought over the counter or no aid to cessation. Real-world effectiveness of e-cigarettes when used to aid smoking cessation, a cross-sectional population study.
I was a 3-pack-a-day smoker.
I smoked for 26 years. I smoked a pack of cigarettes a day.
I started when I was 14 and I'm 40 right now. So it's a long time smoking.
Since I tried these back in 2012, I have stopped smoking.
I've been vaping longer than 3 years, 2010, 09, 08. Yeah, wow, I've been smoking for 5 years.
And I've stopped the last 6 months, which is nice. Feel a lot better, much better, drastically better actually.
I feel a lot healthier. I can breathe a lot better. I'm more active. I can taste food. I can smell food.
We may not have all of the evidence about e-cigarettes. We have a lot of evidence about the dangers of smoking, and we know cigarette smokers are quitting smoking and switching to e-cigarettes, so why would we make it harder for them to quit?
First, make them understand that vapors are not smokers, because you're not going to get vapors' rights until they get that vaping isn't smoking.
So you've got to think, well, okay, so it's not dangerous to be near someone who's using an electronic cigarette. There's really no evidence and actually very little reason to believe that it's going to renormalize smoking. So what's the problem?
The problem in the end may simply be the word e-cigarette.
The fact that it was called an electronic cigarette was a huge mistake. You know, it should have been called something else. We need to get that e-cigarette. It's a cigarette. No, it's not a cigarette. It's something else.
We are not tobacco and we are not a medicine. We are a vapor product category, and a new category needs to be created.
These products are 99% less hazardous than cigarettes, plus or minus 1%. So the whole scientific debate is, are they 98% less hazardous or 99.9%?
Queen Mary University in London. Ian is having the levels of carbon monoxide in his body tested.
So that's showing a 4 there, so that's a non-smoker reading. Non-smokers.
Ian now uses an e-cigarette. The test is overseen by Professor Peter Hayek.
Many people out there think that nicotine itself is a dangerous poison, but if nicotine is taken without the accompanying toxicants, then the health effects would be very similar to drinking coffee.
So that's a 4, so that's the exact same reading as before the e-cigarette.
So e-cigarettes contain no discernible toxins or carbon monoxide.
But these people that are going out and trying to ban them are trying to make them sound like they're just as hazardous as cigarettes.
What reading will Ian get after having a normal cigarette?
So you've got a 10 there, so that's officially a smoker reading.
Experts say e-cigarettes are orders of magnitude safer than normal cigarettes.
We are concerned about the potential for addiction and abuse of these products. We don't want the public to perceive them as a safer alternative to cigarettes. Rita Chappelle, FDA spokeswoman. They are a nicotine delivery device intended to be used like a cigarette. What happens to someone who stops inhaling the tars of cigarettes and only inhales nicotine? We don't know. There is at least the potential for harm. Norman Edelman, Chief Medical Officer, American Lung Association.
Well, Big Pharma, the big pharmaceutical companies that sell the gums, patches, the lozenges, and the Chantix, which is GlaxoSmithKline, Johnson & Johnson, and Pfizer, have basically given several $100 million to the American Cancer Society, the American Heart Association, the American Lung Association, the American Medical Association, the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and quite a few other groups to lobby against e-cigarettes. And what's unfortunate is that these groups, after receiving this money from the drug companies, aren't being ethical and disclosing the fact that they're receiving this money to lobby against this. They're coming out presenting themselves as concerned public health activists when they're nothing more than big pharma lobbyists.
Right now, electronic cigarettes are not regulated by the FDA.
My opinion is that the current state of regulations is an utter mess.
And really it's going to come down to the FDA and how the FDA wants to treat this category, and that's really going to dictate the forward trajectory of this industry.
If the lawmaker needs to make it so we don't sell electronic cigarettes to children under 18, how about we all just agree with them that that's a good idea?
You know, there should be concern over labeling and child-proofing packaging. There should be concern over the contents that are going into the liquids, and all liquids should require testing.
E-liquid is generally made up of 4 components. Glycerin, a simple sugar alcohol compound used commonly in the food and pharmaceutical industries. Nicotine, a mild stimulant in small doses, but a toxic poison in large quantities. Propylene glycol, a liquid used to disperse other chemicals into vapor. It is commonly used in inhalers, in fog machines, in addition to e-cigarettes. Flavoring, a variable component that could potentially, but does not necessarily, contain harmful compounds.
This product deserves its own category. It should be regulated as its own individual product. There are still going to be regulations. No matter what, there will be regulations. And we want regulation. We want the product to be safe.
Companies generally receive the flavoring used in e-liquid production from FDA-regulated sources. meaning the ingredients of these flavors are disclosed by the manufacturer. There are certain compounds used in some flavors that are safe for consumption, but have not necessarily been tested for inhalation.
And I would strongly oppose regulations that say you can't have a flavored liquid. But I would be strongly in favor of regulations that say you can't have a liquid that contains citric acid, because citric acids could be harmful to you.
There is evidence that some flavoring components are not safe for inhalation. Certain flavorings containing diacetyl may potentially cause long-term health problems. By imposing ingredient disclosure laws, banning the use of certain dangerous compounds, and enforcing batch testing, we can make vaping safer.
We know for fact that there are flavorings that have elements that we don't want to vape. So just using food-grade flavorings I find to be little consolation. We have Philip Morris in the e-cigarette business. We have R.J. Reynolds in the e-cigarette business. What's in their liquid?
Although more time is needed to research the long-term effects, vaping has been a successful alternative to smoking so far. We cannot allow this technology to be stifled by regulations created out of fear and misunderstanding, but we must not proceed recklessly either. The public should support those who have quit smoking with e-cigarettes while continuing to encourage studies of their long-term effectiveness.